Hello, good morning. This is Solimweng. Welcome to the number one media company, WorldView. This is where we explore everybody's perspectives on things that can broaden our own worldview. Today, I'm supposed to be sitting here with a Mr. Panyasa Lesufi. Many of you know him. He's a man who doesn't need much introduction, but just for those who have been on holiday somewhere away from Mother Earth, I have to say he is the fairly recently elected chairman of the African National Congress in Gauteng. He was known as the long-standing MEC for education. He ruffled many feathers. He's a man who says what he thinks. He also went into some kind of conflict with AfriForum at some point. I think there are all these things that are being said about him but we also know that he's popular in Gauteng. I suppose that's why he became chairman of the African National Congress. Also, it's because it's, he was at one point after the last elections appointed to another position of MEC, and through popular request or demand by the people of Gauteng, that he returned to the education MEC position. He was returned to that position. Clearly, he did many things right. He was a man who was always in situ where there were problems, but he was also a man who was often accused of alienating the Afrikaans people or the Afrikaans language. There was a conflict between him and AfriForum. We know that he had made some claims about them wanting to assassinate him, following his family, his children, himself, looking at his accounts and all that. And miraculously, and there was some kind of negotiated settlement. We know about negotiated settlements in South Africa that culminated in the two parties coming together to say, well, maybe we can do a better job together, which is good. This is who we are, South Africans, right? But I also wanted to ask him about the ETOs in Johannesburg, the countries that are, it looks like they have not yet reached a united approach, as it were, within the African National Congress as to whether the ETOs are going or coming. They've been going or coming depending on who speaks. As we have come to understand the African National Congress, when one person speaks, you mustn't, draw your full stop there. You must wait for the other person to speak because they might say it's something entirely opposed to what had been said before. So, Gauteng, the ANC has been governing more or less, or would I say misgoverning Gauteng for all these years. And we've seen coalitions within municipalities coming and going. There are now many municipalities that are governed by coalitions of parties like the EFF, the DA, Action SA, now the New Child on the block, and others. What is the ANC saying about all of this? What is the ANC saying about 2024? What is the ANC saying about Phala? Again, it's one of those things where, depending on whom you speak to in the African National Congress, you'll hear a defense of President Ramaphosa, or somebody saying, yeah, he has to account. He also has things, responses or answers that he owes to South Africa. Not only about Phala, by the way, he owes responses to South Africa or answers about what he heard, what he knew, what he saw during state capture when he was deputy president of the African National Congress and deputy president of the Republic of South Africa. There's no way that there could have been meetings at a high level where the deputy president of the country was asked to step aside. I mean, of course, we know that. I was going to ask Panyasa Lesufi about that. I was going to ask him about what are prospects for the ANC coming together with the EFF in 2024. Are they quietly having conversations about the worst case scenarios in case of, the Action SA, which seems to be swallowing people all left and right, especially from the DA. The EFF has remained stagnant, but it's still a formidable political force at 10 or around 10, 11, 9% in South Africa, even though the leader of the EFF has been going all places. But I also wanted to tell Sophie that people like myself, I grew up in Soweto. I was once a hardcore supporter of the African National Congress. I even had a membership card of the African National Congress. When I first saw those Mkhonto Wesizwe people arrive in Soweto, soon after their liberation in the early 90s. I was most proud. I was like, wow, these guys, we're going to be safe now. We're not going to have all those SANDF people, SADF people, that's what it was called during apartheid, just pushing doors and coming into our homes with their dirty boots or disrespecting our presence in front of us. So many people who used to have so much love for the African National Congress have seen themselves lose hope over the years. Why does the ANC care about all of this stuff? Does the ANC care? Does the ANC love South Africa? I was going to ask him, do you guys love South Africa? What does it mean to love South Africa? Do you love South Africa or the ANC first? Must the ANC collapse and die? Or must South Africa collapse and die so that the ANC can continue to exist? Would there be an ANC without South Africa? What does it really mean to the African National Congress? What does it mean when a Speaker of Parliament who not too long ago received a number of SUVs for her office suddenly buys herself two 1.5 million rand BMWs, or at least two BMWs at that cost collectively? In these times when there's so much unhappiness, so much pain, so much inequality, poverty, hunger, anger, corruption, the public infrastructure in South Africa is being taken to pieces every day by individuals. Someone said to me recently that it's not just the ANC, and I totally agree. It's not just the ANC. The ANC was supposed to be the leader of society. It still likes to call itself the leader of society, but the rot has happened at the head of South Africa, which is the ANC, as it were, because it leads government. It is still the elected party to lead the government of South Africa nationally until the next elections. So people are doing their own thing. We are rudderless as a country. What is the ANC doing about that? What does the ANC take responsibility for anything at all? Do they really? Do they look at themselves in the mirror and say, what have we done wrong? And we keep hearing beautiful speeches like from people like former President Thabo Mbeki, and I lost some respect for him as well, a lot of respect for him many years ago when he was the first post-apartheid president to refuse to meet the Dalai Lama, I think under pressure from the Chinese. He's the first post-apartheid president to interfere with the criminal justice system when he suspended a truly respected national director of public prosecution, advocate for Sipikoli, because he was trying to stop him from arresting a buddy of his who was another national commissioner who was corrupt and captured by the criminal underworld. Mbeki said, no. Between the criminal justice system and my buddy, I'll choose my buddy, which is what he did. So he took the NDPP at the time, threw him under the bus, and then came a certain Mr. Mutlanti, was appointed to lead the way, almost as a front team for a certain Jacob Zuma, who was also on the run from the law. And Mutlanti came in and said to the suspended NDPP, listen, dude, we're happy to take you back. That was so after they removed Mbeki from power. We're happy to give you your position back, but there's one condition. You're not going to touch the old man. The old man was Zuma, because he came, as I said, running, looking over his shoulders from the long arm of the law. Again, the NDPP said, no, but I can't do that. I have constitutional responsibilities to deliver my job without fear, favor, or prejudice. And Mutlanda said, well, how do you go? We can't have you. We can't have anybody trying to be good here. Boom, he kicked him out. So look, what does Lesufi think about these things? What does Lesufi think about the number of South Africans who are leaving the country? And they come in all colors. There was a time when they said, yeah, it's just white people, let them go, they don't belong here. Now there are many black people who are leaving the country. They're leaving, and many people who have not left will leave if they get an opportunity to leave, to take their skills and the little wealth they have out of the country. So we might have spoken about the SARS, which was also brought down to its knees, and all that tax base that had been reduced as a result of the criminality that happened at SARS. But it's also been reduced as a result of people who could take the money out of the country having done so. people who could take their skills out of the country having done so. And that movement continues. What is the ANC planning to do to stem the tide? Does the ANC appreciate that in being elected to lead a country like South Africa, it's been given an amazing historic opportunity to lead this country as further away as possible from the pain of apartheid? And it couldn't do that. It can't do that without first acknowledging something that's not to be discussed to be disputed. That's a diverse country. South Africa will always be a diverse country. You'll have Indian people, colored people, black people, white people, or whoever people call themselves. We have Muslims, you have Christians, we have non-believers, you have Jewish people in South Africa. And that is where the true wealth of South Africa resides. Does the ANC appreciate that? When the ANC leaders stand on podiums and they keep saying, my people or our people, usually they mean black people. But surely if you lead the society, especially given the history of South Africa, when you say my people, you should be talking to all people of South Africa, everybody. A white child in South Africa must grow up thinking, you know what, I want to be president of this country. But when one listens to the narrative that we hear in politics, forget the EFF for a minute, I'm talking about the African National Congress. One gets the impression that it's finished. You know, to a white child, to a colored child, the people who used to look like you did lots of harm to us, black people. Therefore, it's finished. There's no room for you anymore. If you want to grow to become an Elon Musk, go out there, go to America, go to the Netherlands, go to Australia, Canada, and other places. So we're saying to these South Africans who could be awesome, positive contributors to the country that we can still be, you don't belong here by the color of your skin alone. You don't belong here. We, South Africa, we're a country, we're still a country that enshrined in its constitution and Bill of Rights the protection of LGBTQ plus communities. But we were also the country under the African National Congress that decided a number of years to abstain from a United Nations resolution which aimed to protect these people. And I remember that the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, International Relations and Cooperation, one Maite Mokobane, I think, she said, when upon being questioned why South Africa took that stance, she said, well, we can't be seen to be running too far ahead of our African peers. Now, that was a very strange response from this minister. And nobody said to her, stop, you can't say that. That's not true. That's not why we did what we did. So leadership is not a popularity contest. When you want to be loved, when you still have unresolved childhood issues with your self-esteem and you get placed in a position of leadership, you end up creating lots of havoc. Leadership is sometimes a lonely space. And you're going to appreciate that there are moments when you have to walk for ahead of the flock. But you must do so resolutely, not too far ahead of the flock, so that you are not reachable, ahead of the flock, so that they can follow you, they can understand why you're taking those steps. And a lot of times the ANC failed us in South Africa. This is part of what I wanted to discuss with Panyasa Lesufi. When we defended Omar al-Bashir, the Sudanese president, who was also on the run from the law, from the ICC in South Africa, we ensured that he was not arrested. Everybody defended him on the name of his, in the name of his blackness or black brotherhood or something like that. They did not talk about the poor black men, women, children in Darfur region in the Sudan who were killed, displaced, harmed, raped by this man's people. They were not worried about that. They were worried about this one man. And they were also worried about, they were just so intent on saying to the West, well, Tony Blair and George W. Bush have not been arrested for invading Iraq and Afghanistan. Why should we get our own despots and crooks and criminals arrested? That's the attitude we have under the African National Congress. And South Africa, we have an opportunity to have relations with much of the world and dump all these Soviet era policies, way of thinking that only the Chinese and the Russians have got good intentions for us. All states act in their best interest. But we tend to be looking for love in the wrong places. Surely we should rethink our foreign policy. Look, I know that Mr. Panyasa Lesufi is not the national leader of the ANC, but he's a brand. Nobody can deny that Panyasa Lesufi is a very strong brand in the African National Congress. Who knows? He has his own presidential ambitions. Everybody does, seemingly, who gets indexed into these higher and higher positions. But of course, it's going to be tough. I don't know. I don't see how the ANC is going to survive 2024. If it does, and it continues to do things the way it does, I fear that South Africa is going to be in serious trouble. But Panyasa Lesufi strikes me as a man who's attractive, who has the courage to say things that other people fear to say, who was, like those firefighters who run towards the fire when everybody's running away from the fire. He's always struck me as that kind of person. Does he ever stop and look at South Africa and look at the ANC and ask himself if the African National Congress is still good for South Africa? And ask himself if what is good for South Africa is still good for the African National Congress, and what is good for the African National Congress is still good for South Africa. I can't have this conversation with him because he stood me up. So I thought, look, I have a choice. I could just go home and hopefully maybe get him to agree to another conversation in the future. I really hope he will. Or just sit here and talk about some of the things that I would have asked him. And there's a whole lot of things I would have wanted to ask him. And the countries I mentioned, the countries in Gauteng, and can they be used for something else? For instance, to help the community in South Africa in Gauteng. But it is not just Gauteng. It's South Africa. Panyasa Lesufi is an economic, this is a strong political brand in South Africa. Nobody must forget that. Panyasa, please come and join, and let's have a conversation about South Africa, about love, about diversity, about the economy, about international relations, education, health, about the defense of the indefensible, about the Zondo Commission, about Palapala, about you, what would you do were you to be elected the next president of the African National Congress? But I also wanted to ask him, people tend to think, yeah, if you choose so and so, they'd unite the African National Congress. Of course, Ramaphosa has failed, despite all the claims he used to make. And in uniting the African National Congress, they'll hopefully lead to some form of healing for South Africa. Does Panyasa Lesufi believe that it would take one man or one woman to unite the African National Congress? Is it possible? Has it not reached a point of no return? I had a conversation with Mr. Kyle Niels a number of weeks ago on this platform. If you want to go and find that interview, please do so. And going by what he said to me, there is no longer love lost between one side of the African National Congress and the other side of the African National Congress. Perhaps the African National Congress is like one of those old power stations that have reached the end of its years, and it needs to be decommissioned. It's done what it can. It can't possibly aim to stay in power forever and lead to South Africa healing, because it still has all these old ideas, all these old people who do not care what the world thinks about South Africa. They continuously repeat the same things, do the same thing, buy themselves big cars, spend public money on security for themselves. Look at Bheki Cele. This man travels around with I don't know how many convoys of cars defending him as if he were like president of Russia. I mean, please. Helen Zille, when she led the Western Cape, she said, no more blue car convoys here. You don't see the MECs in the Western Cape running around in blue car convoys, and everything is cool. It's okay. If you live in the Western Cape, like I did, like my home is still in the Western Cape, I'd occasionally bump into MECs alone with their children having coffee, walking a dog. Nothing happens to them. Why do these ANC people think that the minute you become MEC, you've got to be running around with 25 people defending you, 6, 7 cars blocking the highways so that you can pass? I mean, is there any change to this sort of madness that could possibly come from the African National Congress. Anyway, I didn't say these things to ensure that Mr. Lesufi never comes to this discussion on worldview, because we need him. We've never had an ANC, at least I've never hosted an ANC leader here, but the ANC leader is still the Makulu boss of South African politics. There's no way that we can discuss the future of South Africa, the pain of South Africa, what could possibly happen without having a discussion with the African National Congress. But we also know that the future, the responses that South Africa needs in order to get out of, in order to see hope, its sun again, to realize its potential, are not likely to come from the African National Congress. Not anymore. That is my view. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've come this way, listening to this friend of mine today, it's because we enjoy the content, of course. We could go on forever. Perhaps next time we'll be joined by somebody from the African National Congress to just look us in the face and tell us what plan they have to help South Africa stand up again. My name is Solim Wang. This is WorldView. Thank you very much. Please continue to share our videos. If you want, subscribe to the WorldView channel. Get more and more people to be part and friends of this channel as we continue to grow and to get more and more people to come and join us for difficult, comfortable, exciting, fun conversations. Thank you.